I come to you this morning in the weakness of the flesh. I'll explain that a little bit later probably, but I just, I don't feel particularly strong. I was at the refrigerator this morning, and Kiro, who's one of my grandsons. How old is Kiro? 7. Thank you. I guess I was sort of staring off into the distance, like my hand was on the refrigerator, and he said, "What are you thinking about?" He's 7. Or he said, "What is Gaia thinking about?" That's what he said. That's what he calls me. And I said, "Oh, I have to speak this morning. I have to teach this morning at church." And he asked me a question that no one's ever asked me before speaking. I mean, I've spoken thousands of times. No one's ever asked me. He said, how do you think it's going to go? Isn't that something? How do you think it's going to go? Now this painted me into a corner, you see, theologically. Because normally what we would ask each other is like, how do you feel about it? Or are you ready? Or do you like what you have? But actually the question puts it more on what I think God will do, or what I think the end result will be. So you probably should be more concerned about that, shouldn't you, in the end? Not how well you do, or if what you have to say is interesting or boring or life-changing or something. But in the end, what do you think will happen? And because God is involved in this process, because you've begun the morning even with open hearts and worship on your lips, I said to him, I think it'll go well. Not because I feel that I bring much to the table, but because I know. I've seen enough times that when a hungry heart meets a gracious God, there is healing and breakthrough, discovery. So I expect that this morning. Not because of me, but because of him. So you have a text, I think, presumably, in front of you. So why don't you just take a few minutes quietly to read that to yourself, and then we'll have a discussion together about it. Okay. A couple of you maybe put your table out there, or what did you notice? What impressed you? Yes?
I saw a connection in verse 10 and verse 13 and 14, because it talks about, I want to know Christ, yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participate in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death. So in order to do that, we can't look back on the past. Like if we dwell in our past sufferings and we sit around and hold a pity party, we're not going to feel like experiencing future sufferings. So that's why 13 and 14 kind of goes together with that. Like we have to forget what is behind, strain toward what is ahead, press on toward the goal, like to keep our eyes above on the future goal of being resurrected with Christ. That helps us endure whatever sufferings may come.
Very good. I agree. That will be my third point. Well, no, I'll do it better, but
yeah, in the same in the same like clumps of verses, it says like, and so somehow obtaining to the resurrection of the dead. Like it's almost like Paul leaves mystery for like how Jesus works. He's not like solidifying everything, but there is like some sort of mystery. I don't know, it just stuck out to me.
Yeah, he doesn't know exactly how he'll rise from the dead, or exactly how that whole transaction works, but somehow our life, our pursuit of his life, our participation, I mean, that word is the word koinonia. It's the same word we use for like fellowship or community, to have like a communion with Jesus and his suffering. That he can do, that he understands. I mean, Philippians starts with him saying in chapter 1, I think this suffering I'm currently undergoing, my chains, whatever, I think it's actually going to be good for me and for the kingdom. He's seeing hope and possibility in his own difficult circumstances. That part he understands. But he thinks somehow if I'm like Jesus in this life, in the way that he suffered, maybe I'll also get to be like him in the world to come. But he doesn't, I just think Paul has a kind of humility to that, you know. It's not that he's unsure of it, but what exactly it looks like. What else?
I was just connecting some dots for the safeguard and the mutilators of the flesh. Like
You would be drawn to that,
Yeah.
Jeremy. Yeah. Uh-huh.
talking about people who are dogs and mutilators.
Yeah.
But then there's this, I guess I did not remember that the word safeguard was there. I was like, oh, what's the connection between rejoice that actually keeps you safe or guards you in some kind of way from what? From from becoming that thing, or from those people who attack you? Like, you know, that type of thing. So that just had me going thinking.
Yeah, and I don't think he means it like they're people that are out to mutilate your flesh, but these are people that, this is early days of a controversy. Did you already talk about this? Am I covering old ground? I missed the last couple of talks. Anyway, it's an old controversy about, they were called the Judaizers. They sort of followed Paul around. So Paul went to a city like Derbe or Lystra. They'd come behind and go, yeah, that's great, you heard Paul's gospel, but you also need to be circumcised. So these are grown Gentile men who are presumably uncircumcised because that's not part of their religious, cultural, system. And so they're saying, no, you have to follow the law. You have to follow the letter of the law to be a proper Christian, to be a true Christian. So Paul's very frustrated by these people. And, he says here, like, he calls them dogs and evildoers and people that want to mutilate. I mean, they're literally wanting people to mutilate themselves in a very sensitive spot, a very tender location. And he's saying, we don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. That's an old covenant, whatever. But he goes even farther in Galatians. So Philippians is written before Galatians, but in Galatians, he says he's so sick of them. He's like, I wish they'd just go the whole way and chop the whole thing off. But that's for another day. You can read Galatians on your own. It is in the Bible. What else? Nothing from this side? You guys just going to be weak today? No thoughts? Come on, bring it. Come on, east side? No? All right. There you go, Sammy. Represent. Although you are wearing a Eagles jersey, so that's quite troubling.
It is troubling. We were talking about here at our table about all the accolades that he mentions that he has from a religious standpoint.
Yeah.
And that he says that's all garbage. And I think the terminology is a little bit stronger than garbage in the original language, but the idea that, hey, all that, I'm giving up all that because the one pursuit, that one thing I want to pursue. Yeah.
It's interesting. He says, I'm counting all that loss, I'm giving it up. But he still remembers it all, he's got the list. He still has that script almost. Like he knows his credentials. I actually think that might be meaningful to be able to say, I know what it is I'm laying down. I know what it is I'm trading. He's not insecure. He doesn't imagine himself to be worthless in some way, spiritually or whatever. Sammy?
If you could clarify what he's saying here, when he says, not that I have already obtained all of this. Obviously, I know he's talking about the resurrection, or have already arrived at my goal, but I press to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. So he's talking about being apprehended, but it's like I'm already apprehended, but I want to apprehend the apprehender.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit of conjecture, but I feel like what he means by that and what he's saying is this like vision of the kingdom of God. It's not that I've attained that. I want to know Christ and this thing that he wants to build, this world, this possibility. A world where resurrection, it reigns and is real. And it's not like I've reached that goal. Of course I haven't. I'm a broken person still struggling to just be Christ-like every day. But I try to take hold of that thing which took hold of me. Like, I've seen this, I can't unsee it. It is now the prize. It is the goal of my life, the kingdom of God, where Jesus reigns over all things. You know, Revelation, he says, behold, I make all things new. The renewal of all things, I think, is something that gets activated in the imagination of a person when they truly give all of themselves to Jesus. It's not just Jesus that you receive. It's everything that Jesus will do in the earth, in time. Let me make some comments. I think this passage can be broken into two core ideas, two basic ideas. Considering everything loss, so that the work of counting up your reasons to be confident in the flesh, and then counting as loss. We can talk about that. That's a big idea here. And the second is this idea of pressing toward a goal. What is that goal that's worth everything? And what did Paul mean by it? But as is my way, I tend to just look at, I get focused on one word or one thought in a passage like this that I'm looking for as kind of the fulcrum, the hook to hang it all on. And for me, it is this line, but one thing I do. One thing I do. I think the passage is mitigated by this summary sentence. And almost as an afterthought, a throwaway clause, he says, forgetting what is behind. This one thing I do, oh, and by the way, the only way to do that one thing is to forget what is behind. That's what I want to talk about today. I don't usually title sermons, but if this sermon had a title, it would be something like The Power of Forgetting. Power of Forgetting. And I think forgetting looks a lot like losing things or something getting lost. It looks a little bit like forgiveness, and it looks like the future, in fact. So let's explore that together. Looks a little bit like losing things. He says this line, we're not like we worship by the Spirit of God. We boast in Jesus, and we put no confidence in the flesh. Put no confidence in the flesh. All of us have reasons to put confidence in the flesh. I want you to just sort of imagine a bucket, and that bucket is sitting by you right now, and it's your bucket. We'll call it self-esteem. Things that you believe are good about you. Things that you know to be strong or important or useful or even superior to other people. And somebody like Brian, I'm just riddled with insecurities and anxiety. I don't have anything in that bucket. It's not true. You do. And if you think you're the only person that has anxiety or is riddled with sadness or something, then that goes in your bucket because you think you're better than everyone else. But we all have these reasons to believe in ourselves, to think we're important or smart or superior in some way. It is a struggle for all of us. You could call it pride, superiority, entitlement. These are things we all have in us. Some of us have it in so great volume that it's spiritually debilitating. It's ugly to other people. I mean, I would say as a very young Christian, I mean, maybe we might still think so today, but I would say as a very young Christian, this was like a debilitating problem for me. It wasn't that I couldn't do things in a spiritual context and people go, good job. It was that I had this inner thing raging inside of me. And I knew that my whole life with God depended on my ability or his ability somehow to bring that into submission to him. And in many ways, my whole life and leadership and career has been an attempt to figure that out. You know, the first thing I ever wrote, the first book I ever wrote was a book on humility, which is funny to me apparently only, but if you'd have known me at 27 when I wrote a book on humility, there's a kind of irony to it. But to me, it was like a life or death inner struggle. And I think what goes in this bucket, what goes with the bucket, and actually I want you to just think for a second. I'm going to give you a couple seconds here. What's in your bucket? I'm so thankful for Sam this morning. I every day I'm closer and closer to Sam. I'm just so impressed with him. I love him. I'm watching his heart kind of blossom. He's gone from being someone who's technically good at leadership to someone who has this profound love for God, heart for God. I want to follow him. I'm so thankful for him. But he's got stuff in his bucket. He can play guitar. He can sing. He's handsome. These are all things that have to go into the bucket called self-esteem for him. What is it for you? Think about it. What are you good at? Where are you superlative in some way? Maybe you've been a good Christian, a faithful Christian for a long time. That goes in. Maybe you're sort of honest, or maybe you're good at your job. What is it? And there's a script that goes along with that. This is Paul's script. I mean, he has it down. He could say it because it's right there at the tip of his tongue. He knows what he's good at. And our script comes out when we feel entitled, when someone wrongs us, or we think, oh, I should have been listened to, and you don't think you have any of those things until that script comes out. Until you're saying, well, wait, someone should have listened to me, or I should have been considered, or whatever. That's when you realize you have this confidence in the flesh. We're all entitled in some ways, and our sense of self-esteem, our belief in ourself, our however, some of you the bucket is quite full, some of you the book is maybe meager, but we all have it. And I think part of what Paul's saying, I put all those things in that bucket. I count them all. This is like almost an accounting metaphor. I count them up. I take these things that are in the asset column. If you know anything about a balance sheet or about simple accounting, you have an asset column. This is your income, revenue, whatever, the positive side. He said, I take all of those things and I move them to the loss column. I count them so I know what they are, and then I count them as loss. I don't think he's saying necessarily they are garbage, but he's saying I see them as garbage. I imagine them to be the same as something that I just can get rid of, can throw out entirely. Something you no longer count on, and something you will happily trade for something that goes only in the gain column. A couple days ago, Skylar and I were watching, of course I was re-watching, the very important documentary series on the civil rights movement called Eyes on the Prize. And I've been trying to get Skylar to watch it for some time, and I just realized he's going to graduate soon, and I'm just like, no child of mine should leave the home without having watched this with me. So we watch it again. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I want to say the second episode. No, the first episode is about the Montgomery bus boycott, and when that kind of kicks off, with Rosa Parks refusing to sit in the back of the bus and she gets arrested. That's all set up. She worked for the NAACP. She had done it before. It was timed so that it could sort of trigger this boycott, which had happened before and hadn't had really the traction that this one ended up having, where the whole city, every black person who needed the bus said, we'll walk. And they made an incredible network of car sharing and took care of each other, looked after each other. And they were looking for a leader, and in a way they were sort of looking for somebody new, because it was like the old kind of church and city leaders in the black community. Like, we need somebody who's maybe a fresh face. And there was a new minister in town, a guy called Martin King, and he was 26 years old. 26. And they asked him, would he be the head, the president, the chairman, or whatever, this Montgomery Improvement Association, to lead this bus boycott. And of course, that is the springboard for King's career as a civil rights voice. Not just a leader, but the sound almost of that movement. But I bring that up because there's a incredible little piece of footage very, very early on in his career and during that boycott. It's putting so much financial pressure on the city, and it's kind of, as these things do, it's kind of surfacing, bad actors. And so someone goes by and like firebombs King's house. You have to understand, he's 26. He has a baby daughter and a wife in his house, and the front window is broken with a firebomb. And we also know, because of the story of King, that's not in this episode, we know the story of King. This is a time where he has a real kind of come to Jesus in his own life. Like, are you serious about me? He has an incredible story, like incredible little sermon called A Knock at the Door at Midnight, and it's about this exact time in his life. But there's this incredible little piece of footage, and I had to pause it when we were watching it. And I just looked at Skylar and I'm like, can you believe that? I mean, because he's so youthful looking, he just looks so small and young, and he's sitting on his couch, and there's a TV interviewer with the mic in his face right after his house had just been firebombed. And he's visibly shaken. I mean, he's visibly almost kind of a little bit like a stunned look on his very young face. Of course, he's properly dressed with a suit and tie at all times. And the interviewer asks him something to the effect of, aren't you afraid? And do you worry about this kind of thing happening again? Something to that effect. And if you've seen it, you know what I'm about to say. And it's just this kind of matter-of-fact response that King gives, where he says, I'm not concerned about my life at all. Our cause is just. It's like Martin King, at 26-year-old, had crossed the Rubicon. He had decided, this is what I'm going to do. This is who I'm going to be. And whatever it costs, this is worth it. It's an assessment of value. I'm so impressed by that. By someone so young. But as I explained to Skylar, he probably was annoyed by me stopping the documentary periodically to give comments, But as I explained to Skylar, this is no ordinary 26-year-old. He has a PhD in Tillich and Tolstoy, and he understood nonviolence. He was set up for this. He was prepared to lead a movement of nonviolent resistance because of the theological groundwork that God had laid in him before that moment. And he'd already made the trade. I guess you could say it that way. He'd already made this trade. My life for your kingdom. My life for your kingdom. And how he understood, I mean, if you know the kind of, trickle down ideas from Tolstoy, who influences Gandhi, who influences Tillich, and King being influenced by Tillich, and this idea of the Sermon on the Mount and nonviolent resistance, the weapon of love to be used on your enemy. It's a very Jesus idea, and to go for it, to believe in it, is to have looked upon the face of Jesus in a way that all of us should look upon. And he says this, Paul says this, for whose sake I have lost all things. There's a part of me that kind of feels like, man, that's, like, why is God doing that? Like, why? I thought, like, is God poor? Does he need all of our stuff? Like, why would God ask for everything from us? It feels greedy almost, maybe even cruel. Especially if in the end God has everything that he wants to give back to us. So why does he need our meager lives' accomplishments? Why does he need our strengths or our good deeds or our abilities or whatever? Why do I have to trade those in to get something from God? Why can't we have both? Why do we have to lose one thing to gain another? Well, you have to lose everything you have. This is the best I can explain it. To gain everything he has. This is the trade. But why? Why couldn't God just say, it's fine, just be who you are, and I'll just give you what you're missing? I'll give you the rest. Because half the gift, guys, is learning to let go of our own kingdom. Because being the leader of your own life, being the one that curates everything that's in the household of your heart, is actually a perilous, dangerous game. And we think, because we've come to believe, culturally, we think that autonomy to create our own life is the greatest good. Freedom, we've told ourselves, is the greatest good. To be allowed to be the one to call the shots in my own life is the greatest good. It is not. That's a false narrative. If I could say it this way, it's a false teaching. It's heretical to the metaphysics of the world that Jesus understood. It is not better to run your own life than it is to hand over the keys of your life to someone who loves you perfectly. We are, let me say it this way, we are poor curators of truth, goodness, and beauty. If asked to create a world, imagine your life, your psychological and physical life. Imagine it's a museum, and you're meant to fill it with art. And that art is meant to reflect truth, goodness, and beauty. These Aristotelian ideas of really the pursuit of all human life. That's your job. You will fill it with garbage. It will be more like a house of horrors because of our own judgment, our own biases, our own brokenness, our own self-destructive tendencies. We will assemble something which is actually horrific, but we'll think it's good because we chose it. Because it's ours in the end. And being ours, being the ones who call the shots, that is the problem. It makes us Christ. The word Christ, what does it mean? Why does Paul keep why is he so into the word Christ here instead of Jesus? Why does he keep saying Christ? Because Christ means the anointed one, the one who God has said is in charge. And if you instead are the one in charge, then you're the anointed one. You are Christ. Christ is a movable term, you see. Christ goes to the person who is anointed to rule. And for most of us, I would even say majority of American Christianity, most of us, we are the anointed one. And that's reinforced, actually. We have to lose our right to reign, to count it, and then to count it as loss. Most of you know Monica. She's sitting there. She knows the ages of everyone. Monica's always losing my things. And look, that statement itself is something of an ongoing dispute in our house. But I'm just going to say it. I'm going to put it out there. Monica's always misplacing my things. Probably her things too. I just don't notice or care. But if something goes missing, and by the way, maybe people that are married would know this. Maybe you have some similar situation. But if something in the house goes missing, I think there's at least a good chance that she's the one that's misplaced it. This is my starting belief. And that's not always true. But it's so often true. So mostly true. And she also thinks I blame her for everything that's missing. Which I do start there. I'm going to admit it. It's Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is probably the best. And I just think we're just going to start with, do you know where that thing is? Like, have you moved it? Are you the one? She's always incredulous with me. How could you? And you always think I move your stuff. You always think I'm the one. And then 5 minutes later, she finds it. Well, I guess I did. But here's what happens. I'm going to explain this to you because this is going to be meaningful. Here's what happens. She's picking something up. Let's just say it's sitting there or whatever. And she's moving it. She's noticing it, whatever. And she thinks, where should I put this thing? Let's take something like my tape measure, And she thinks, where should I put this thing? And that's all very normal. You know, you find a thing, it needs to go where it needs to go. It needs to go somewhere else besides where it is right now. But here's where it all goes wrong for Monica. If you were trying to hide something, like if that was your goal, if you thought to yourself, where can I put this tape measure that no one will ever find it? If you thought to yourself something like that, where's the most unlikely place to put it? Or where's the this is what I think. Where's the last place that someone would ever think to look for this? That's where it's going. That's where the tape measure is going. I'm not sure why, but that is where it's going. And I'm not saying this is what goes through her mind. I don't know what goes through her mind, but ostensibly this is the place that she will invariably choose. She will choose the place that is least likely for a tape measure to go. The medicine cabinet, the bottom of the laundry. It's a hiding game. That's what I think. I can prove this. I'm going to give you one very recent anecdote. These things happen all the time, so I'll just pick the most recent one. Monica was outside, and I had left an extension cord, one of those long orange extension cords out. Yep. And so sometime later, I'm looking for said extension cord. Anybody know where that is? No idea. And then we keep looking. We look all over the house. We can't find the extension cord. Okay, I don't know. Maybe it's lost. Maybe it's gone. Whatever it is, what it is. And then Monica comes to me kind of sheepishly, and she says, "Brian, there's a chance that I may be responsible for the missing extension cord." And I said, "Okay, tell me more." She said, "Well, I was outside and I saw the extension cord, and so I thought to myself, where should I put this?" And so she said, "I put it in the garbage can." I mean, it was like a container. It was nearby. It happened to be empty. She put the extension cord in the garbage can. She's like, "I'm afraid it's gone out with the garbage." I'm like, "Yeah, it has gone out with the garbage." And this is the rub, because the other problem you see is that this location is no storage. It's so strange, it's so unusual that she herself will have no memory of it in the future. I mean, within a matter of minutes, she'll have no memory of where it went because it's such a great hiding place. To ask her, "Where did you put it?" she'll do what I would do or what you would do or any of us would do in that situation. She'll start to think, and then she'll just go looking around in places where she thinks a person would have put an extension cord. But the problem is she doesn't put things in places where people would put an extension cord. She puts them in places you can't find them. You see the problem. While I don't love this dynamic with our things, I really like it as a metaphor for forgetting what is behind. Literally. You see, you don't just forget a thing. You have to put it somewhere. You have to put it somewhere. You have to place it in a place that you would never think to place your failures or your shame or even your proudest moments. Whatever's in our past, whatever potentially holds us back from our future, we can't just forget it. That's not so easy. You can't just say, "Forget it." You have to put it somewhere which is easy to forget. You have to put it in a place you would least imagine putting it. And to stand in the presence of God and to say, "God, here's what I'm good at. Here's what makes me think I might be better than you at running my own life. And I'm going to put those things in your hands. I'm going to count them as loss. I'll leave it with you." It makes me think of something called transactive memory. I've done a lot of thinking and reading about memory in general. I just find it fascinating. Degenerative memory ailments and how the brain works and what keeps it functioning and so on. But we all have, essentially, to have a healthy mind, you have to be able to forget things. And we do. We choose which things to remember, which things not. I'll say more about that in a minute. But in order to be able to hold in our mind the key things we have to hold, one of the things that we do is we actually compartmentalize or put key memories inside other people. And researchers call this transactive memory. It's most evident in, say, very old married couples, people that have been married 50, 60 years. Essentially what they do is they say, well, I don't know, well, the best way to explain it that everyone will understand is you don't know my phone number, but you have it saved in your phone. You know where it is. And that's transactive memory. You don't remember my number, but you remember where the knowledge of that number exists, and you know where to go to get that. And this is what old married couples do. They store memory in each other. And so, for example, I don't do anything related to our healthcare stuff. Monica does all that. So if you asked me a question about it, I would have no idea. I would really struggle to answer who our provider is, what we have, anything like that, because I store that memory in her. I know where to go to get that information, and pretty much everything else in our lives she stores with me. Not totally false, but I am joking, by the way. So, is anyone uncomfortable with me razzing Monica? Because she's fine, I promise you. And just check with her later, so you'll see. She's no skin off her nose. I mean, in a sense, you take all these things, what you've accomplished in life, and how you've failed in life. We'll just call that your past. And you count it as loss by handing it over to Jesus. And the memory of those things can be left with him. They're not destroyed forever, but to you they're forgotten. But you know where they are. This is how we code, store, and retrieve key memories in our lives. We place them somewhere. And this is part of what I think Paul means. Leave it with God. Count it as a loss. Let go of it so that it's with him. And the bits that you're meant to find again or remember or be retrieved, he will retrieve for you if and when they're needed. That's number one. Number two, I think forgetting looks a little bit like forgiveness. I'm not going to go well into this. It's just something that struck me that I felt I needed to say. There needs to be in our lives grace for ourselves and for others. It's very hard to forget something or someone if you can't forgive them. I mean, letting go, counting loss for the things that you have done that deserve recognition, that's one thing. But also the sin that's come upon your life has to be forgotten. Now, how do we do that? I mean, to let go of the wrong done to you, that's forgiveness. And that can be so hard to do. There's so many people in my life right now, I can think of 3 right now off the top of my head, who hold on to wrongs that other people have done to them. And what is that saying, that sort of proverbial saying, unforgiveness is like drinking poison, thinking it's going to kill your enemy? You're the one that's harmed by a refusal to forgive. It stays with you because it almost continues to harm you. That wrong over and over until you can release that person and let them go. In fact, I think some of the people I'm thinking of, I actually think they see it as a kind of retaliation. You know, like I don't want to forgive that person. And I don't want to forgive those people. And I don't want to forgive them because I'm mad at them and because I want them somehow to be hurt by my refusal to forgive them. But they're not. You are. But also the wrong that you've done to others, because you're not innocent in this world. We have to, seek forgiveness. We have to apologize, to ask for forgiveness, to seek reconciliation. In some cases, even make amends. But in the end, the person may or may not accept your pleas for forgiveness. And in those cases, we also have to forget and let go. This is the part, all of it, we put into the hands of God, and we count that as loss in order to gain him. But you don't only forgive to free yourself. That's a big psychological kickback, but you do it because it's what makes the kingdom come. I just finished writing a manuscript for a new book on union, this idea of kind of unity and mission. And so if you indulge me, I just want to read a small excerpt because I think this is how I'd want to say it. It's a little piece in there about mercy and its relationship to unity. It should be said that I've lived and led long enough to come to this topic riddled with my own wounds, some of which I'm probably responsible for bringing on myself, and some of which I'm innocent. C.S. Lewis wrote about the subject of pain in his academic tome called The Problem of Pain, and in it he would famously say, "Pain is the megaphone God uses to rouse a deaf world." But he writes that before his marriage late in life to an American woman called Joy. Their romance was to be short-lived, as Joy would die from cancer only 3 years later. And it was in that time of grief and personal pain that Lewis would go on to write a very different book on pain called A Grief Observed, challenging some of his initial thoughts on pain untouched by their personal experience. Our conviction about things like failure, loss, and pain usually need to be reconsidered in the light of individual experience. It is the convictions that remain that are probably the most to be trusted. And so it is that I write these suggestions not from a place of youthful theological idealism, but from a place of grizzled theological resolution. I'm sure that if ideas like forgiveness and grace cannot be used in these very practical ways, then we are lost. If we cannot forgive the villains of our own story, we are no true sons or daughters of God, who, if he taught us anything, he taught us to forgive. And if we cannot find union in spite of sin, then we have not grabbed even the first rung of the ladder that leads to eternal life. These ideas must be real in the fire of our deepest. They are not real at all. I write these things knowing just how hard it can be to do them, but also knowing that the doing of them is the key nonetheless. He has not called us to something easy, but to something he has already done first. We have received a gift, and to reject the mercy we must offer is to reject the mercy we've already received. I'll leave you with that. Finally, forgetting looks like the future. Looks a little bit like the future. So as I think about what does it mean, sort of this power of forgetting, like why is this a virtue or some kind of, you'd think forgetting things is a bad thing. What is discipline? Is this me or is it just kind of going in and out? I believe that, yeah. Safeguard me, Jeremy, from those phone users. You know, a strong mind is able to forget things. Part of what that means is being able to evaluate information, to categorize. And there's an overwhelming amount of information that comes into your head. And a strong mind has to be able to decide which things I'm meant to remember and which things I'm meant to forget. I need to forget. You just can't keep it all in your head. It's overwhelming. Even your own thoughts crowd our minds. So to be able to decide what is high quality information that needs to be remembered and what is not and needs to be forgotten is important. It's a sound mind. Forgetting then is a crucial skill to this idea of a high performing mind. Part of it is also which information is important, but also needs to be forgotten in order to see the world in new ways. Should I use a handheld? It's all right. It's not your fault. It's the devil.
It might be.
Yeah.
You talk about forgiveness and the devil comes.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did come. Came and messed with my microphone. There was a study done some years ago where they were trying to, essentially what they asked people to do was think of a song in your head. and then tap out that song on a table. Tap out the meter, the rhythm of that song on a table. And they asked people, okay, how many people do you think will be able to get the song that you're tapping out? And what most respondents said was about 50%. They thought that about 50% of people would be able to get the song they were tapping out on the table. That wasn't correct. You want to know what the actual number of people that could figure it out? It's about 2 in 150, 1.3%. This is what came to be called the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge. Once you know a thing, like once you hear the song in your head that you're tapping, it's hard for you to know what it's like to be the person that doesn't hear that. Very hard. You can't understand why people can't hear that's, the Farmer in the Dell or whatever. How is that the song that just came to my mind? But what's a Taylor Swift song, Tommy? I don't know. How do you not hear Shake It Off as I'm playing this? Obviously, that's what it is. This is called the curse of knowledge. Once you know, it's hard to not know. It's hard to know what it's like to not know what you know. You hear the song you're tapping, and it becomes impossible to understand what it sounds like to the person that does not already know it. This is also something that's been referred to as the beginner's mind. I love this. The ability that very creative people have to basically forget something they know. So you're actually quite smart, you know a thing, but to be able to forget it temporarily in order to see that thing as a beginner. And in so doing, to find new insights and breakthrough ideas. There's a guy called Shunryu Suzuki who said, this is the best way I've heard it said, in the beginner's mind, there are many opportunities. In the expert's mind, there are few. In the beginner's mind, there are many opportunities. To the expert, there are few. If you already have the answers, you're not looking. That's the curse of knowledge. So it is that this advice, I think, from Paul, is like a life hack, guys, predicated on forgetting what is behind. Forgetting, if you can forget what's behind, it makes him rely not on himself, in other words, confidence in the flesh. He has to forget what he's done before. In fact, you can think about your past. It can mess you up in two ways. One, you can think, well, I already know how to do this because I'm very good at this. Look at my list of credentials. And that's going to walk you into a room in the wrong way. Or you can think, well, I'm a huge failure. I've made all these mistakes. And Paul could have thought that too. He persecuted the church. If he ruminated on that, he could think, I should never be the one leading anything in the church. His own mind would disqualify himself. The only way he could be the apostle that God had called him to be is if he could put that behind him. He had to be able to forget it. Both his accomplishments and also his failures. He has to forget to move forward, to press on to where Jesus is, to let go of the past as something to take pride in or something to condemn himself with. And then if you don't have the past to ruminate on, if it's gone, what space is left for your mind to occupy when it's wandering or exploring or dreaming? Only the future. Only the future. Forgetting unlocks the future. The forgetting drives us into the future because that's all that's left to think about. This is where Paul says, pressing on toward that goal. Forgetting helps us live into the future. You know what? In the future, you've never accomplished anything. I feel like she's shushing me. Are you shushing me? No, probably not me. Yeah. I would take that very personally. Shh, Brian. I'm sorry. You haven't accomplished anything in the future. You haven't done anything. You can't rely on your own strength or your own accomplishments because in the future you haven't done anything. You also haven't failed yet in the future. The future's pristine. It's holy. There's a purity to the future. The future is holy if God is the one waiting for you there. What plans? This is how I want to end today. What plans do you have for your life? What goal are you pressing towards? What is the prize you someday hope to attain? And is Jesus at the center of that vision for your own life, as it is for Paul? I read a book a couple weeks ago called Between Us, How Cultures Create Emotions. Really interesting argument that emotions are essentially culturally generated. And a little bit over my head, but I hung with it as I do. And one of the things that she brought up was that happiness, the idea of happiness, is not universally seen in all cultures as a positive emotion. Do you know that? That's crazy. In fact, in some high honor cultures, personal happiness has a negative connotation because they see it as potentially standing in conflict with the good of the group. To think my personal happiness is something to go for is a way of saying I don't care about the group, about the family. And so happiness itself is seen as a sort of dangerous thing, negative thing. I think there's truth in that. There's something to be learned in that. We often say to ourselves in the Western context, hey, do whatever makes you happy. I can barely think of a more dangerous or insidious thing to say to another person than that. And yet I have said it. I have said it. And when I've said it, I can't remember exact times, but I know I have said it. And when I've said it, I didn't feel wrong saying it. I didn't realize what a heresy it is when saying it, because everyone will agree with you. It's something that social psychologists call social proof theory. Social proof theory says the more people that believe a thing, the more you believe the thing is true. Nothing to do with its actual truthfulness. But what proves it is social agreement. The more people, look, if 300 million Americans can't be wrong, you should do whatever makes you happy. It's not really good advice. It's not something Jesus would say. It's not something Paul would say. But it is something we say to each other. We have reified in our culture as the highest good. Purest kind of support for each other, actually, is to say to the person, just do whatever makes you happy. That's not to say that happiness is not something that God wants for us. Ultimately, I actually think it is. But how do you get there? And here's the paradox. Here's the irony. The only way to get to lasting, meaningful happiness is to not be the person that drives the car there, because you don't know the way. You don't know the way. And if you're the architect of your own happiness, you will end up sad indeed. I think that's what Paul means when he talks about the confidence in the flesh, in your own desires, your own judgment, your own taste even, your own taste. This is good. This is not good. But to hand all of that over to God and to be given in its place, Jesus Christ. Someone for whom the universe is in awe and who obeys at an atomic level. All of creation knows and listens to his voice. We are the only created thing that does not. And we hide from him instead of being hidden in him. It all started in the garden. The very first thing we did when we became aware of our own brokenness and sin is we hid from God. And this is right in the heart of this text, is Paul saying, I have new desires. He says this very small statement. He says, I want to know Christ. That's the whole point of my life now. This is my mission statement. This is the goal of my life, to know Jesus Christ. Not in addition to something else, but as my singular purpose. This is who I am now. And in my own weak way, maybe you too would say the same. This is what I want now. This is who I am now. I've seen many people turn away from the faith over the years. I cannot turn away. My life is in him. My hope is in him. My dreams are in him. My plans are in him. They're about him. They're for him. They're looking around the corner of time to see if I can see him. But guys, there are strong competing ideas in your life and in your mind right now. I'll leave you with just one. Does anyone, are some of you old enough to know the show called Seinfeld? So you're familiar with this, what was a very popular show in the 90s. I'd say one of the most popular, and I'm going to just make the argument right now, most damaging shows ever made. Because it's saying something, it's making a commentary about humankind and the pointlessness of life. And that ideas like learning and growing and loving people and caring about something and living for something other than yourself is actually not something people should do. It was famously called a show about nothing. This was the whole idea. In fact, there's an episode in Seinfeld called The Pitch. It's one of the episodes where they, like George and Jerry, actually pitch a show to a network about which is essentially their lives. And if you remember this episode, they basically say, it's a show about nothing. And the executive's like, well, what do you mean it has to be about something? Like, no, that's the thing. It's like not about anything. And nothing ever happens. In fact, George, I think, has the idea of like, there will even be scenes where it's just a person reading. And that will be the show, watching them read. And they can't understand how that would be a good idea. But it's so meta because it is the actual pitch that Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld did to NBC to get the show made in the first place. Their lives are petty. They're four friends. Their lives are petty and pointless, and they're actually not meant to be likable. And they somehow make a hit show with four characters that you don't like, actually. They succeed. It was itself a satire. It was a scathing commentary on humanity by Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David, and people swallowed it without realizing that they were the butt of the joke. This is Tim Goodman, a writer for the San Francisco Examiner, wrote this about in the run-up to Seinfeld's finale in 1998. He wrote this: meanness is celebrated. Nobody is living an examined life. Getting yours is the goal. Anger and bitterness supplant happiness. Emotionless sex wins out over love, and the mundane is king. Chuck Klosterman, the incredible genius cultural commentator, wrote this about Seinfeld. Seinfeld was a farcical show about nothing, but that description was lazy. It was not a farce. It was a social satire. And to nonchalantly claim it was a show about nothing erroneously suggests that its vision was empty. Seinfeld was never a show about nothing, even when nothing happened. Seinfeld simply argued that nothing is all that any rational person can expect out of life. It was hilarious, but profoundly bleak. By consciously stating it had no higher message, the creators referred to this, in their set, they referred to this as the no hugging, no learning rule. No hugging, no learning rule. It was able to goof around with concepts that battered the deepest tenets of institutionalized society. It was a satire so severe that we pretend it wasn't satire at all. Most episodes of Seinfeld circuitously forwarded two worldviews. First is that most people are bad and not very smart. The second is that caring about other people is absurd and not very practical. It is this is Klosterman's summary. It is the most villainous sitcom ever made, particularly since its massive audience never seemed to fully grasp what it was literally seeing. I think Seinfeld was a show reflecting on confidence in the flesh. This body is all there is. So have a laugh, do what you want, cut people out of your life. In fact, the first episode of Seinfeld is about him not wanting to be friends with his lifelong friend anymore because he just never really even liked the guy. I don't want to be funny, but he said it's because he had a ping pong table. That was his only reason for being his friend. And he said, I would have been friends with Stalin if he had a ping pong table when we were kids. It's funny. There are no big ideas. And this is a worldview. What I'm saying is art imitates life and vice versa. Seinfeld wasn't speaking into the void. It was speaking to a consciousness, to something that makes sense to us. There were no big ideas, nothing to live or die for, nothing to care ultimately about. And we are corrupted by that insidious idea when we have no goals for our lives, or our goals are only for ourselves. I have in my life considered hundreds, if not thousands, of figures in human history, and there's no one that even comes close to Jesus. No one. If he were the only person in history, if he were only a person in history, not God made flesh, if he were just a person in history, I would still pattern my life after him. But of course, he was much more than that. And he rose from the dead and he ascended into heaven. And unlike other characters from history, he has appeared to me in a personal way. And he's asked me to take his hand. I still remember being 13 and being at a camp and the gospel was presented. And there was this idea of like, you give God your life. And I understood it. Even then, I understood it was a trade. It was all that I had, all that was my life for him. And my life was broken. I had an abusive home. I had came from a broken, violent home and a broken marriage. And I thought, you'll take that? That's what I'm trading? Of course I'll do that. I have no plan B. I never have. That day I accepted that trade and I've never regretted it. And now I've had 1,000 encounters with him. I've come to see that his story is the story that should shape the way I see the world, the way we all see the world. His heart, his goals, his voice, his leading, his idea of who we are. That's everything. And it's worth everything. Because in the end, he will give you everything. As we come to the communion table, I'm reminded of, it's chapter 2, actually. I don't think Tommy just told me that you didn't actually cover this text last week, but yeah, you can come up, Emily. But there's this line where Paul in chapter 2 is talking about Timothy, his dear friend Timothy. And he says this about Timothy. He says, I have no one else like him. He's sending Timothy to them. He says, I have no one else like him. There is no one like this guy. What a thing to say. And the next line he says this, for everyone looks out for their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. Guys, Jesus was Timothy's prize. He was Paul's prize. Is he yours? I'd like for you to just bow your head right now. I want you to do some inventory. The first thing I want to ask you to do is fill that bucket up real quick. What reasons do you have to be confident in the flesh? Count them. Think of what those things are. And see yourself giving that to him. Count it loss. Call it loss. And next, I want you to think about the goal that you have for your life. Where do you want to be in 10 years, 20 years, end of life? Do you even have a goal?
And is that goal about Jesus? Is that dream that you have for yourself or for your life, is it just to graduate or just to get a degree, or is it just to get that next promotion or maybe pay off your house? Or guys, think bigger, dream bigger.